Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Wave Strength webinar series. My name is Jim Breen. I'm head of marketing for Pacific Life's institutional division.
And I'm Paula Lopes. I'm a marketing strategist for the consumer marketing division at Pacific Life. And we're super excited to be here today because we have an amazing panel for you guys. Jim, should we get started?
We should. And just to share a little bit about what we're doing, this is a LinkedIn Live event, and we are live. About 3 years ago, Pacific Life's institutional division established what we call the Wave Strength platform. It's a thought leadership opportunity for us to connect to our audience and actually speak with our audience and involve them in the conversation. So we're here live in a studio with a series of panelists. Let's go to the studio shot here, and there they are. There's the panelists getting ready for us in a moment here to come and talk to them. But we're really, really excited that you're joining us, and we want you to be part of the conversation. Throughout the event, you're gonna hear us mention, hey, add your comments into the chat feature of LinkedIn. Also, you'll have the opportunity using your phone to scan the screen and scan a QR code to take part in our polling, our live polling, where you'll be able to answer questions. So with that, Paula, you ready? You excited?
Absolutely. Let's get this
All right,
rolling.
let's roll the intro.
Welcome to the Wave Strength. Innovative solutions for a secure retirement. Presented by Pacific Life.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We're live here in the studio. And before we begin, let's go ahead, Paula, would you mind just explaining why we're here today?
Absolutely. And before I get started on the why, I really just want to take a moment to thank everybody for joining us. Time is valuable, and we don't take that lightly. So thank you for spending a little time with us. We hope that you take away some great insights from the wonderful panelists we have. On that note, March is Women's History Month. And so we have assembled a beautiful, amazing, smart panel of professional women to talk to us about important issues on this important topic of women.
Fantastic. And let's do a roundtable first, and let's introduce our guests. So starting over here, let's start with Pacific Life's Ruth Shaw. Ruth, thanks for joining us. Perhaps you can share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, as Jim mentioned, I'm Ruth Shaw. I'm an actuary and have been fully credentialed for a number of years, but have balanced my career over the last 15 years or so between defined benefit and defined contribution retirement plans. I'm very focused on retirement and trying to get people comfortable with their retirement situation and retirement planning early on.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Very important stuff.
Yeah. Hyun, please.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Hyun Swanson, and I'm with the University of California. And the University of California consists of 10 campuses and 5 medical centers spread throughout the state, and my role is the interim executive director over retirement program services, and that means I oversee operations, policy, and actuarial services for our pension as well as our retirement savings program.
Fantastic. Suzanne, please.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Paula. Thanks for having me. I am Suzanne Norman. I'm an education fellow with the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I've been doing that for the last few years, and I made a pivot in the pandemic. So I'm the classic pandemic pivot. But after 30 years in the investment industry, I decided to devote myself to women's empowerment, both mental fitness and financial fitness. So thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, and ALI does so much. We're excited to hear more about what the Alliance for Lifetime Income is doing in this area. Jackie, please.
Great. So happy to be here. My name is Jackie Reardon. I lead our client marketing efforts for Retirement Insurance 529 and Wealth Management for Franklin Templeton. Excited to be here to join the conversation and also share some results from our very hot off the presses 2023 Voice of the American Worker survey, which I think is super topical to what we're trying to accomplish here today.
It really is. In fact, in the live polling that we're going to be doing today, we actually polled questions and the data that we're going to use in the polling from the Voice of the American Worker survey, which, as Jackie mentioned, is a fantastic survey now, 3 years, I think, in the running that Franklin has been doing. So you've spearheaded that, and it's a fantastic platform of information, frankly, because you have the nice website landing page and then the actual data itself. And we mentioned the live polling. We'll, in a short time, run a graphic that you'll see, and that graphic will allow you to scan the screen to jump into our live polling so that you, our audience member, can be part of the conversation
and then we'll discuss the findings from all of our registrants, all the participants, all of you that are watching us right now will be able to in real time have a conversation through this polling. So it's going to be amazing. So with that said, we'll jump into our first question here. And Jackie, if you wouldn't mind kicking things off, let's talk about the challenges women face in retirement right now.
So I think there's a lot of challenges and trends that are coming up. We're seeing across all Americans, and our research is showing it. But this year's research in particular, we saw a lot of demographic emphasis, I would say. So specific groups where some of our results are super emphasized, and women were the one group where we see specific results just with like underlined, highlighted exclamation points against it. So I think some of the things that are really bubbling up for us and things that, as I'm speaking to plan sponsors, et cetera, I see so many head nods when I mention some of these topics. But this whole concept of financial independence, that's a trend that's really usurped the concept of traditional retirement in our research. So long gone are the days where people are sort of working to a specific age and they just want to stop working and then go move somewhere warm and spend their later years. The ultimate,
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. The ultimate goal for most folks, and we see it emphasized for women as well, is reaching financial independence, which is a very individualized, personalized goal if you think about it, right? My idea of financial independence is going to be different from everyone else on this panel. So we're seeing in today's environment in particular, which I know we'll talk quite a lot about, the stressors, that is in jeopardy for women.
Yeah.
The ability to reach financial independence, the ability to feel secure and have faith in what their later years are going to look like. And I know we'll get deep into some of the stressors and roadblocks that exist there, but I think ultimately that ability for them to reach financial independence, they're not feeling that great about it today, which I think is something, a huge challenge, but obviously a huge opportunity for all us as an industry to really kind of think about how to address those roadblocks.
Yeah, I agree.
Suzanne, what are your thoughts on challenges that are common for women, or, maybe tie a little bit back to Jackie? Or
For sure. Thank you. And a perfect segue to Jackie, because a study that the Alliance for Lifetime Income produces, a not-for-profit, of course, these are all publicly available on our website. We conducted a value study, so I heard a couple of words from Jackie. Safe and secure are the two big drivers. And I have a degree in psychology, so I talk about the emotional landscape a lot. But that was a perfect segue. The risk or challenge that I think about a lot, and I know Ruth's an actuary, she can talk for hours about this, but and I would listen, but it's the longevity risk, because this is something that is, it's new. It's for all of us. And we're bad at future forecasting. So the idea of talking to someone as a financial advisor, let's say, about, you're projected to live an average of XYZ years, we can't wrap our heads around that. And we know that there is a big concern from women thinking about how they will make their money last as long as they do. And so that's one of the big things that we talk about a lot at the Alliance for Lifetime Income is making people understand, or helping people, I shouldn't say make, that sounds forceful, but helping people understand how to scope out that lifespan, especially for women, and making sure that money lasts as long as they do.
Retiring with dignity, having that opportunity to, the choice, the opportunity to think beyond just that handshake at the end of the employment years. What is next?
Yeah.
Hyun, what are your thoughts?
Just the financial independence. It's so true. Women, I feel like, are disproportionately affected by life events. Whether it's having children or losing a spouse, whether to death or divorce. That really upends women, and that's often because women are, sort of in a passive role, or almost like the passenger and not really the driver of the financial, the plans for retirement. I didn't include it in my introduction, but, I am a single mother of two in college. And, I remember having that experience of, oh, it's on me. It's all on me. And so that means we, women, we just need to be prepared for, I always say, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Just be prepared for if something like that does happen.
Yeah.
Can I just add one
by all
other
means.
thing too? I think you articulated a real life example of defining financial independence, which is the not having to rely on anyone else for whether that be a paycheck or any sort of other wealth. And I think that was a really beautiful way of articulating the real life example of that. You have to be able to not rely on other folks to really meet the needs of your family and your life.
May I add something?
Of course. Yeah.
This could be a trend. But I thought this was fascinating. Some data that just came out talking about 62% of women that are single plan to stay that way.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
whether
saw that
it's
come up
death,
too.
divorce,
Yeah.
So
Ruth, what are your thoughts?
Wow, I could go so many ways with this. I'm going to talk for an hour. Now, as all of you were sharing different things, I started thinking about just risks with longevity, and that by itself, even as an actuary, I understand it, but I can't help somebody definitely with how much money they need or how many years. And you see a lot of I think very daunting and very scary figures out there. Everybody has to save $1 million or $500,000 or $2 million. None of those numbers are right for everyone, and I think that's where it gets very complicated for people. But I think putting all that aside, the biggest risk is someone just not taking any action.
Absolutely.
Whether it's saving that first dollar, and everyone can, save $1 somewhere along the way and just start. And I think it's just starting that action. It becomes a routine. We all have good habits and bad habits. But I think saving for retirement as much as you possibly can is a good habit we all need to develop.
That's an excellent point, Ruth. Just starting somewhere, right? Sometimes we look at the whole picture and we think it's daunting. We're like, oh my God, we have that whole mountain climb. But just taking those little action steps, just listening to this information here, knowing that women, we live a little longer. And I don't like to call it longevity risk. I like to call it a blessing, longevity blessing, right? We do live longer, but planning for it, making sure that we do retire with dignity by understanding what are those planning needs that are really important to us.
And that's so important too that you mentioned a moment ago, Ruth. You said you championed that too, Paula. Like, we look sometimes at problems in our lives, and they just seem maybe to us that this is like an impenetrable wall or this mountain that I'm never going to be able to climb. But if you just take that first step, if you can, and even if it is that dollar, right? And people say, oh, just eliminate that 1 cup of coffee a week or something. But even if it's just that dollar, and you start there, and you start seeing over time an increase and the compound, et cetera, and then it's just that first step, because the only way you're going to get through that wall or over that mountain is with that first step.
Right.
So let's ask our audience members now. Let's engage our audience members, and I want to encourage you, if you have questions for the panel, please add them into the chat. And if we can't get to them during this live event, we will do our best to connect with you after the event. But I want to see if we can roll here the QR code. And let's go ahead and have everybody check out that code you see on your screen right now. Take out your device, scan that code, and you're going to jump into what we call Poll EV. And you can just put a name in there, and we don't keep that data. But you're going to see a question that allows you to engage live. And the question is, what percentage of women feel their retirement plans are in jeopardy due to the current economic situation? So let's allow time for our audience to jump in there, scan that QR code, and give their thoughts on what they feel is the correct percentage. And maybe we can bring it back here. Ruth, I have a follow-up for you. I mean, looking at this question here, what do you feel? Like, what do you think about this?
So I think it's interesting, the current economic situation. I mean, there's a lot going on. Interest rates are rising, stocks are volatile. Maybe, bonds, some of the bond funds, are falling in value due to interest rates rising. So that's thinking about, savings. But on the other hand, there's some really good things that are happening. And I think if you pick a point in time, there's always something going on. There's never like the perfect, time frame.
So true.
And, I started out in my career, and it's been quite a while, but I was working next to people who had 13% home loan rates, and so you start thinking, wow, how did anybody get through that? There is not like a perfect time. And so if you're waiting for the perfect time to save for retirement or waiting for the perfect time to do something, to take action, it's silly because you're never going to find that exact perfect economic time, at least. There's always going to be something going on somewhere.
Yeah,
Well,
that's such a good point.
Great point. Yeah. And let's jump over to our poll here and see where the data is bringing us. We still have some folks adding in their thoughts here. Up 31% is going up. It's going down. It's going up. It's going down.
Close race.
Yeah,
It looks like C is really leading the pack over here.
I agree. And in fact, the number pulling from the data from the Voice of the American Worker, believe it or not, is 66%. So either people just feel the same way, or we have a lot of Voice of the American Worker fans in the audience here.
Hashtag Voice of America.
Hashtag, yeah.
And Jim, I think what's important to point out about this question is that this is an example of one that was emphasized for women, right? So the average population also feels like their retirement plans are in jeopardy because of the current situation, but even more so for women. So I think that again, is why this conversation is so topical. What is it about what's facing women today that's causing them this added sort of concern around their plans for their later years retirement, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, this is great. Suzanne?
We did a survey last year, 5 released, called State of Women. And the thing that underscores, again, what Franklin Templeton and Jackie's team did, we saw 3 out of 4 women were highlighting inflation. So to Ruth's point, there could be just on any given day, pick the concern. But I think it speaks to, again, having that freedom, the choice, the independence, and why we're here today to talk about the solutions. Because while they flagged that as a concern, only 2 out of 5 said they knew what to do about it. So education is huge.
Yeah, and we have, just looking at our live questioning here, it looks like Christina said, and she was championing some of the things we talked about here, the child care, parent care, and the spouse care, or the choice of staying single. Quite a choice. A lot of choices there from some of the comments we had earlier. Kimberly actually asked a question, and I'll open this up to the group. Can you speak to the way women are disproportionately affected in what they call the sandwich generation by caretaking responsibilities? And that is something that is very interesting. Who would like to maybe throw some comments in that direction?
Paul's looking at me because I chatted with her a little bit before. I have a slogan, which is I challenge employers to pay for the sandwich. And what I mean by that is that, again, with the question, we are disproportionately, I wouldn't even say it's painful because we want to do it, right? We want to raise children. We want to take care of our relatives or our parents. But it impacts how we can save for money, how we get promotions. And so this idea of having daycare, of having elder care services, especially if you're an employer, having a powerful EAP program that pays for some of this, because there's a lot of money that's in those, say another name, but EAP program that can help workers, especially women in the sandwich. So pay for the sandwich.
I love that slogan. I feel like it deserves a T-shirt. And I think just talking to plan sponsor audiences, employer audiences so much, I think the call to action for us is always, and Ruth, to your point about there's always something going on, right? Whether it's this current economic situation or the last one or next year's situation, it's always a perfect time for employers to evaluate their benefit offerings. And that whole concept of total benefits, our research shows that people are interested in holistic benefits. So from an employer standpoint, it doesn't always have to be just what you're getting paid or here's your health plan, good luck. It can be sort of creative and unique. And do I understand my workforce in a way that knows what challenges they're being faced with so that I can be creative in the types of benefits that I'm providing to them?
And I was just going to add real quick, MIT had done a study that I saw, and if you're the oldest female in a family, you are just naturally the person that's going to be taking care of your parents.
Yeah.
And I, of course, am the oldest. And so it did happen. And, it does put a lot of pressure. And I think the other thing is making sure everybody understands expectations. Because actually my dad even said to me, well, why don't you just retire then? I was like, no, I actually like my job and I like working. So I think it's even talking through what are expectations on some of this that's really important, and finding options and just doing what you can. And, at some point you have to draw the line.
Yeah. This is why conversations like this that are honest and real about, topics that impact women are very important. Jackie, I got a question for you.
Okay.
So we got Carolyn Elrod, and she's asking, Jackie, from the research, are women most concerned about financial independence in retirement, or is that a general theme for women of all ages?
Oh, great question. So financial independence is the number one concern for all respondents, women included, and it's the number one financial concern in general. So not just in retirement, but throughout life and like today, like how am I seeking that? It has increased in importance since we started this research 3 years ago, significantly. Even just year over year, it's increased 5%, but it is the number one financial concern. So if you think about all other financial concerns, paying down student loan debt, paying off other debt, how do I pay for health expenses, how do I put my kids through college, et cetera, the number one concern is reaching financial independence. So that's for us is the North Star that most people are working towards. And that's why when we see questions like this or results like this, where women have concerns about some of the roadblocks getting in the way of financial independence, I think it's important for us to kind of sit up and take note.
Great. Well, fantastic. Let's dive back into the questions here. And to our audience, thanks so much for engaging with Poll EV, adding your questions in. I want to encourage you to continue to add your questions. We'll do our best to get to them. And those just joining us, we have live polling. So in a few moments, we'll get into our second polling question. And if you are just joining us, jump into the questions. Add your questions into the chat and LinkedIn. If we can't get you answered at this session, we'll do our best to answer you after the fact. So let's dive into question number 2. Ruth, I want to pose this one to you, if you don't mind. Put you on the spot. What can employers do? Let's talk a little bit about employers. Okay, so what can employers do to support women's needs in retirement? What are your thoughts?
So I think this is the perfect time for employers to step back and look at their benefits programs broadly. It's not just the retirement plan, it's everything that's out there. And with the Secure Act, that was legislation that was recently passed, there's so many different opportunities, and no employer is going to adopt all the changes. It's too expensive and maybe not fit the workforce needs. But I think stepping back and saying, okay, here's our plans now. What's good about it? What's not so good about it? What are options? I think there's options out there that can benefit both the employer and the employees. So every organization is going to be different. But if you think about, some of the ones out there, emergency savings, there's ways to create emergency savings through a retirement plan or elsewhere. But I think somewhere it needs to be at the top of the list of how to help people just create that. And I was talking to someone earlier, like my grandmother had the cookie jar. Emergency savings is there. My grandmother also had pasta boxes and all kinds of other places. In fact, she, lived to be 91 and found money. When she passed away and we went through the house and had to clean things, it was like, go through everything because you have no idea where she hid money. And
These
she
Cheerios
had...
seem, wait a minute, it's a bygone?
So I do think emergency savings is at the top of my list of probably something that can help all age groups.
Hyun, maybe you could share your
as
thoughts.
an employer,
Yeah, exactly.
it's perfect for you. I'm happy to report that we are doing a complete benefits assessment. It's time. It's definitely time. So we'll see what the results come back as. But also, I think it's important for employers to provide some sort of foundational level of benefits that's almost, mandatory. We provide a pension or a defined contribution, like 401k style option that is, to us, just foundational. UC contributes, the employee contributes, but then also providing an additional way to save, right? We have like 3 different plans, but you have to make it easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Payroll contributions,
Yes.
it doesn't get easier than that. So we have them set up. We also have a program that can be used as emergency savings. We just don't market it that way or promote it that way. So we need to really, a lot of employers have great benefits. They just aren't promoted the right way. And so we need to do a better job of encouraging more savings, but also, educating folks on why it's important to save for retirement, what the limits are. We have investments that have already been vetted. We have, low fees. And also what University of California does, which I think is really special, is we provide a lot of educational resources. We have webinars now that we're in a Zoom environment, but also the opportunity to meet one-on-one with someone and discuss your personal situation. And that is, I think, a great way for our faculty and staff to have that private conversation. You don't raise your hand. You're not, raising your hand thinking, I'm not sure if this is is this a dumb question? But, you have that sort of nice, I want to call it safe, but really it's just no judgment zone. It's just you and the planner resource. So we have measured the interactions, and it's over 100,000 last year.
Fantastic.
So, that's the kind of thing, is the resources, but also make it easy for people to save.
Yeah, making it easy.
I think one of the things that keeps bubbling up in my brain recently is like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. That's not a quote of mine. Somebody else said that, but this is a perfect period of time. So great to hear that you're evaluating the benefit offerings, and I hope other employers are doing that too. But to your point, there's probably so many things that most employers already have available, whether it be education, resources, particularly benefits and tools that are uncommon, right? Like not sort of your run-of-the-mill benefits. What a perfect time to just re-educate and say, hey, everyone's stressed out. Things are a little bit, crazy right now. Just as a reminder, we have these tools and resources to you, and we're finding, from anecdotal feedback at least, that employers are getting a lot more engagement, and they're saying, oh, wow, people are actually leveraging that financial checkup tool that has been kind of collecting dust on the shelf. People have that appetite now. So sometimes it's not a big lift for the employer to say, oh, I got to add this, I got to think about this. Maybe it's just an email reminder of what's currently available.
Yeah, and that's what happened to us during the pandemic. In my corporate role before I rewired, is HR alerted us to the EAP. And the richness of that program was just, mind-blowing. I had no idea. But something I heard you say, which makes me very happy as a coach, is having those partners, where you have that space where there's no bad question. And I think with all the mentorship programs that employers have, that there's a real opportunity there to have a financial mentorship program as sort of a sidebar, because people do have hesitation sometimes to look stupid with financial questions. Because, by the way, only 23 states actually have a requirement to have a personal finance class to graduate high school. So we as a society don't do a great job. Yeah.
Can I bring up a topic too that's related? I think there's this, I think we're finding it's a little bit generational, that some folks aren't expecting employers to be that central place. But more and more the younger generations, which millennials make up the largest portion of the U.S. workforce and have for quite a while now. So if you think about millennials and Gen Z, more and more those portions of the workforce are for sure looking to their employer for support and guidance. So our research specifically said in times like this, which to Ruth's point could be last year, next year, 5 years from now, I actually am expecting my employer to help me navigate these times. So I think that that's a huge shift that we've seen. That employers are for sure the epicenter and an inflection point of trust that employees are going back to, whereas I feel like maybe in decades past that hasn't been the case.
It's funny, you brought up this really interesting point that I think is important to remember, in that, in the last 3 years, we had a global pandemic and everything shut down. And so you brought up those opportunities for those kind of like one-on-one in-person communications. And you wonder, wow, how many of those folks did not have that opportunity to plant roots, to start putting that dollar a day or whatever it is. And it's great to hear that you say that there are these opportunities for folks to come together and be comfortable, vulnerable to ask the one-on-one questions, because that is so important. And I'm sure we did lose those opportunities in some way. Because when you are in that virtual environment, be it even by yourself or with a group, sometimes you don't want to answer or ask that question that you may feel a little silly asking.
But I think it's amazing how many employers don't have access to, support and maybe, add, a list of maybe advisors or planners or whatever you want to call it. There's no access through the employer. Through the Society of Actuaries, there was a study a few years ago, and a lot of people had written in different things, and they don't trust the average person on the street that maybe is fully credentialed to advise. But if they don't have some sort of link to them, or maybe they don't feel like they're like me, it could go into the DE&I stuff, but, if they don't understand my situation, so they're not going to be able to help me, or I've read things in the paper and there's been fraud. And so through the employer, there's a bit of trust where, okay, if it's a link from my employer, I trust this more, maybe I'll go pursue it. But it's unfortunate how many people don't have an advisor on their side to help them here and there and guide them.
We have, and I agree completely, because I think what I hear as well is I'm finding someone because it was a referral. But getting back to my educator hat, if you're getting a referral and you don't know what questions to ask, and like we know with a contractor, I would never interview more than, I would only interview 3 or more, right? Meaning you want to get. So we actually have a 10 question or questionnaire of questions to ask an advisor. So to Ruth's point, once you've got, maybe through the employer that kind of list, be a critical thinker and know what questions to ask. So it's on our website, and they're wonderful questions because it will really reveal what kind of advisor is out there. And by the way, I wrote something last year. The Department of Labor, as you define advisor, there were over 1 million. Wow. They can't all be good. Or at least serve your needs.
Absolutely. And I think Ruth kind of touched a little bit on this too, is it's not a one size fits all, right? We all have unique goals and needs that we want for retirement, whether it is that legacy or whether it is, sticking our toes in the sand and having a margarita. So asking the right questions that are really going to get you to that goal, which is your own personal goal, are very important.
Well, this has been great. Our second question here, but let's dive into the poll. And I'd love to engage our audience. So audience members, there is a QR code that you're going to see pop up on the screen right now. And I would encourage you to scan that, jump on into our live polling, and join us in this thought-provoking question. What percentage of women are renegotiating their reoccurring expenses due to the current economic climate? Go ahead and add your thoughts. Which percentage amount do you feel connects with that question? And we'll get back to the thoughts here in a moment. But let's drive to the panel real quickly. Hyun, maybe you can share your thoughts about that question right there.
I wish 100% was an option because everyone should be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Whenever there are, these, I was going to call it incredible, but there, big changes in, the financial markets and, just inflation.
Inflation alone
I
was 8%.
never looked. I thought, well, how expensive could something be at the grocery store?
Yeah.
But, now I'm looking. So, all this stuff adds up, and you can also look at it as an opportunity. Maybe you look at investing as equities as a fire sale. It's a perspective, and this is the time to buy. I'm not providing that as guidance, but these are all questions you should be asking yourself. So that means that anything you're purchasing as an expense, think about the opportunity cost of buying that thing. Well, that could be invested and, creating a lot more income later. So I really hope that everyone is looking at their spending.
Well, let's go to the numbers here and look if our producer can show the live poll here. So if we look again at the question, what percentage of women are renegotiating their reoccurring expenses due to the current economic climate? So it looks like folks felt that D, 57% was the answer. And if we look at the data, I got to tell you, it's actually B, 77%.
Oh, good.
So, yes, we're maybe not all the way to 100, but we're, almost there. Those that answered, B, I hope you really feel that you do have the resources you need. And those that answered D, there's that level. Hopefully, the level of confidence can be increased looking at that number of 77. What are our thoughts? Let's go around. Let's do a quick roundtable. Jackie, share your thoughts, please.
Well, again, this is a question where we saw an emphasis within the female respondents of the survey. What I think is really interesting about just this climate, and Ruth mentioned something related early, which is like, just get involved, right? Like, just get in the system. We're seeing so much in our research that although there's inflationary pressures, although there's market volatility, fears of a recession, people are leaning in hardcore. At least 71% said, I'm taking a more active role in my day-to-day finances, my retirement-related finances. 90% said, I'm doing something to manage what's happening here. So I think it's really encouraging that people are not hiding away, right? They're not sort of getting overwhelmed and saying, let me just hide away and wait for this to pass. They're saying, this is perfect time for me to lean in. And that, again, is where, what tools and resources can we support? Renegotiating expenses, finding an advisor, the myriad of other things that people are doing when they're leaning in, all the things that are available through Secure. How do we align those tools and resources, sort of like, a game of bumper bowl, like they're bowling, like, let's make sure that they have those.
You call it bumper bowl?
Where the little bumpers come up.
With the bumpers. Oh, okay. Yeah. They call it something else out here. What is it?
We call it candlestick.
Oh, candlestick? I don't know. We call it
we're showing our regionalism.
Oh my goodness. Like, soda pop.
Yeah. How do we make sure that whatever the ball is sitting down to knock the pins over? And again, there's just a myriad of things that we as an industry can help support and put those. But the great news is that people are leaning in and taking a more active role.
That's fantastic. Let's go to our questions, if we could, real quickly, and then we'll get back and we can talk about this a little bit more. I think we have some questions.
We sure do. Lots of questions here. Ruth, let's see if you could help us out with this one. Maya is wondering, how would you define financial independence? And then she also gave us a nice compliment. This panel has been very informative already.
Oh, thank you. So financial independence is a tough one. I mean, that could be very, very broad. So if I had to think about what do I think about financial independence, like a lot of people starting out, you're living paycheck to paycheck, and I think that's very common. So that doesn't scare me by itself when I see that, in the news. It just means probably they're younger in their career or whatever. But I think as time goes on, it's getting more comfortable with that. You're not living paycheck to paycheck. You've built up some of these reserves, the emergency savings. You've got some maybe in your HSA for healthcare needs that may arise. Little by little, you're building up these buckets of spending that you need. So financial independence to me is, not being on a budget 100% of the time. Every once in a while, you can treat yourself.
It's a little bit of freedom, huh?
Yes.
A little bit of, I know, Jackie, you mentioned that in the Voice of the Consumer, that's what really kind of floated up. Did you guys have a specific definition?
Yes. So for us, and we do this research in partnership with the Harris Poll, so we helped come up with a specific definition, which is the ability to cover your living expenses without having to rely on somebody else or a salary. So if you think about that, we would probably, everyone up here, have a different vision, and we're probably already like painting it in our brain of like what that would look like. And that, I think, somebody mentioned earlier, more personalized sort of support and resources, which is, I think, a huge call to action, because my idea of financial independence is probably going to look totally different than Ruth's. And that's great. That's awesome. That's the whole point. And that's why I think that concept's resonating with more folks than the old school traditional, everyone stops working at 65 and you go play golf somewhere warm. That's not something like our parents' retirement or grandparents' retirement. That's not the same thing that is resonating with most folks. So we have to figure out, how do we support individual goals, which I love how you mentioned, like sitting down with people one-on-one and be like, what's going on with you? What do you need? What's happening? That's what we need to do at scale. We have to solve for that across everybody.
I just want to share some feedback we're getting from the audience. Everybody seems to love the sandwich analogy earlier. So everybody seems to be like,
you're the marketer, Joe. You run with that. I didn't buy the domain yet.
Everybody loves it. Jackie, you just brought up something interesting. And, Kristen asks, given the current economic climate, what can one do, or how can we, even as an industry, a financial industry, help debunk the thought that while in retirement, less money is needed?
Oh, yeah, that's phenomenal. And I think, I'm sure Ruth probably would love to chat about this for a couple hours. But I think a lot of our research collectively shows that people are not spending enough in retirement. So they're so afraid, right, of, oh, what if I run out of money? What if I live too long, et cetera, et cetera? Because I think we've done a pretty good job of convincing people they should save for retirement, but we've done literally nothing to help them figure out how to spend money. So they're taking this very conservative approach of like, oh, goodness, I'm trying to forecast. Suzanne, I think you mentioned longevity and health expenses, et cetera. That forecasting's really off. So I think we have to figure out a better way to solution guidance for folks around how to spend down all that savings that they've accumulated.
And we have a tool.
Yeah. Well, and spending down. I mean, yeah. We need the education. We need tools to help these folks, these women, understand. We've done some great person on the street work here in the last year and a half with the Wave Strength. Shameless plug. Head over to YouTube, type in the Wave Strength with Pacific Life, and you could see some of our other shows where we just bring a camera and talk to people. And it's so interesting. Ruth, you and I were doing this in Chicago out in front of Wrigley Field, just randomly going up to people. And that is really something that people bring up. Yeah. I'm good. I think I'm going to be okay. I just don't know how. And I've been so focused on saving that money. I don't want to let it go. I don't want to spend because I'm fearful that I'll drive off the cliff. I need to know where the guardrails are, right? And so I think this is important. I think it's a very important part of that educational process, the financial literacy. That I think, what was the stat you brought up earlier, Suzanne?
20, on a given year, it could be 23 states.
Wow.
The survey of the states is conducted every year, and it's sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad. But I will say back to, I think our theme here is that, yes, we know there are problems, but we have solutions.
We have solutions,
or at least we have ideas. So we want to empower women. And one of the things I mentioned, a tool that we have at the Alliance for Lifetime Income was produced by my former firm, Milliman, which Ruth will know well, a large actuarial consulting firm. It's called the RISE score. And I ask and invite everyone to do your RISE score. And what we did, back to what it does, not what it is made it really simple from a user interface standpoint. You have about 7 inputs. It'll take 5 minutes, and it gives you essentially a credit score for your retirement income. So it really lets you get a sense of where you are related to retirement income. Now, it's not going to be the mechanics where, if you're good at it or you have a good advisor, help you put pieces in place to get the income, but we'll let you know where you stand as far as your expectations and your goals. And I can't stress enough how useful it is for people just to get back to underspending.
Yeah.
I mean, this bag lady syndrome is real, right? And it's really a classified term, where women especially, are afraid.
But isn't part of that, I mean, when you think of longevity, nobody knows, how long they're going to live. And so if you don't have a pension, you need to create your own pension somehow to get you through if you're one of the outliers, live to be 110. Otherwise, you really do have to be very cautious about spending if you just have your account and you're spending it down, because while averages say you might live to be 87 as a female, that's the average. And half the people, don't make it to 87 and the other half live well beyond. You have to, as an individual, pretend you're going to be one of them that lives well beyond and save for that. So I think that's where spending isn't, no matter what, I think it's 100% wrong for everyone, because nobody knows exactly how long to spend to. You don't want to underspend so much that you are living, especially if you have the money to spend. It's that understanding and balancing a bit of that. But the overspending is very scary too, thinking, I just heard, at another conference, somebody said, oh yeah, people live on average to be 80. Well, I don't know where that number came from, but it's wrong. And so if you plan to live to 80 and you live to 90, what are you doing that last 10 years?
Yeah.
If you're 65 and run out of money, you go find another job. But if you're 80, you may not be, in shape to get another job. And, there's not a lot of options at that point.
Whether you're spending, slow or expeditiously. I mean, that's important. That's very important. I think we might have time for one more question.
Yep. So I have a question here, and Hyun, if you could kick us off for answering, it is, what do you see as the biggest risk for women in retirement? I know we talked a little bit about the challenges, but maybe a little bit about the risks.
I have to go back to the longevity and just not knowing how long you're going to live and how long your savings or your income will last. But just tying it back to the tools, there are a lot of publicly available tools through your workplace or just online. You can find them, and they are planning tools. And so I encourage everyone to find a tool that might be available through your employer, but through many sites, financial services firms, and really get a sense of assessing your expenses in retirement. And there are they can guide you on what that might be, how much that might be, and then what are your sources of predictable income, Social Security, pension if you have it, anything that generates a regular monthly or annual income. And then the difference is going to be, your discretionary expenses. To make up that difference will be income from your assets. So you have a goal of, how much you need to save for or reduce in expenses. But it just at least, either write it down. You don't have to create your own spreadsheet because these tools are available. But do the analysis. At least assess your situation. And a lot of these tools will help. What if the markets do really well or just average or subpar? And it'll kind of show you how long your money will last. And if you're not in retirement yet, you have time to do something about it and change those bars, the height of those bars or, the line.
You bring up a good point. And I think one of the things that I wish I would have known when I was younger is the earlier you start planning for retirement, the more of a chance you have of winning, right? So if we could give a little piece of nugget for, the moms or the younger women that are listening to this, just get started with something, right?
Yes. I think
compounding
employer plans, especially if they have a match, please.
Yes.
If your employer provides a match, that is, that's free money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is it's important because that match is it's free money. I mean, it really is something that you want to take advantage of that. And even if you're starting off small, maybe you're still you just entered the workforce, you're still trying to take care of those student loans or whatever it is. Start that percentage, even if it's a small amount, it's something, and then increase it over time. Any other thoughts about that question?
I was just going to mention that it's Women's History Month. So I always invoke this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, which is, it takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan. And when we think about the emotions around kind of money and again, not being great at forecasting our future, first step, you said it, right? And we haven't said the word yet, but have a budget, please. Follow the 50-30-20. It's so easy. I mean, it's, maybe hard if the money's not there, but it will keep you back to the bumpers. You know what that looks like, and have a financial plan. Put it in writing. And I might actually say maybe do it yourself. Sometimes it does help when you're manually putting those things in, and update it. So have that plan because it doesn't take that much time.
That's a great small action item that everybody can do, right? Really sit down and look at what those expenses look like. Look at they're just numbers. What's coming in, what's going out, right? And be honest with yourself and really kind of get into the habit of understanding that so that you know how to get to your goal. And I'll do a shameless plug. We have some great resources at pacificlife.com also just to kind of get informed, because I think that's another risk. If people don't get informed about what those solutions are, they're just going to stick their head in their sands, right? And we want our women succeeding. We want them empowered. So get out there, look at the resources that are available, and just educate yourself on all the different solutions that are out there.
So much of what our research shows this year comes back to guidance and advice. And I think I'm going to be talking about Hyun and the one-on-ones you're having with employees as a best practice and example every time I talk about this research. But guidance and advice is needed, right? People need direction. They're stressed out with what's going on. They're leaning in, which is great. But I think if we think about financial independence and how personalized that is for everyone, guidance and advice comes in every single flavor. You can access it in person. You can access it via tools online. You can access it through different companies, et cetera. So just figure out what feels comfortable to you. We use this term meeting people where they are often, which is Maybe you really want to sit across the table from someone and talk to them and look at some spreadsheets. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to be home and kind of put in a calculator and kind of see some graphs, etc. There's just endless tools and resources, so it's a perfect opportunity to lean in, of course, and just access whatever is available. There's plenty available probably through your employer, but if not, there's other things that are available as well.
This has been fantastic. And we, believe it or not, we are almost out of time. But what I would love to be able to do, change things up just a bit here. I'd love to go around the chairs. Maybe Ruth, we can start with you. And maybe each of you can just, from your heart, maybe share your thoughts about, people, women watching this right now. That, boy, I wish I had more resources, or I wish I knew. Share some of the thoughts, personal thoughts that perhaps you have. Wish you would have done maybe 10, 5, 20 years ago. Ruth, maybe we can start with you.
So I, again, got a lot of thoughts here, but I'll share. As an actuary, even some of the nudge books and that are out there, actuaries are perfect. Well, guess what? We're not.
What?
Say that louder. I know. But, when I think back, what would I have done better? I think, starting earlier. On some of these things, when I was working, they didn't have auto enrollment. We didn't, have that at all. So I probably could have done better early on. But I also think there's a time where everybody challenges themselves with learning, like never be done with education. I don't care how old you are. And back, I can remember, it was probably like late 90s. There was a period of time where I would put the kids to bed a little bit earlier. And, it was around 9 o'clock or so. I opened a small Schwab account. Sat there and learning about investments, and again, didn't have much money, just would take a half hour every night for quite a long time, just learning what I could learn. And I think it's just challenging yourself in that way to pick up a little bit of knowledge. I'm still not an investment expert by any means, but it's just getting yourself comfortable with the idea. You don't have to be afraid of starting small. Again, it's just getting in the game somehow, taking action, and then starting out.
Hyun.
I have to say my advice is so similar. It is demystifying investing and, either start, if you haven't started contributing to your 401k or similar plan at your employer, do that. And then as you were doing with your investment account, log in, take a look, see how it's doing. Take 15 minutes out of your lunch hour or before you, log in for work and read Yahoo Finance, something like that. And ask questions of someone that you've kind of identified as your financial mentor. And people are so happy to talk about it.
So true.
So that's what I would say, educate, but also see some progress. It is a dopamine rush to just see like, oh, I've contributed this much more. The markets will go up and down. But, you will, I think it'll encourage you to keep doing more.
Yeah. Suzanne?
I'm going to take my educator hat off for just a moment, and I'm going to be my empowerment advocate. And a lot of the challenges we've talked about today are because we haven't been able to save as much money because of the pay gap. So pay transparency laws are coming to you, near you, and if they're not there, this goes to employees and employers. Treat it like it's there. And Women Don't Ask is a book that I recommend to everybody if we don't have those negotiation skills. We talked about it pre-session. It's a muscle. I talk about my money muscle training all the time. Learn how to negotiate, know what you're worth, and a lot of these financial problems will go away.
Jackie?
Well, if financial independence is the North Star and the name of the game, I think it's important to kind of sit down and think about what's your definition of that and what resources are available to you, and definitely go to your employer because there's things you probably don't even realize are available to you that you can leverage yesterday to kind of start that path forward.
That's fantastic. Well, everybody, we're just about out of time, but what I'd love to be able to do, it's important to thank each of you for spending time. Those of you that traveled a great distance, some of you on the other side of the country, we're in California for those that are joining us live. So Jackie, Suzanne, Hyun, Ruth, thank you for coming and talking to us, and I hope our audience really felt that connection. We were able to really share some fantastic information. And Paula, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and you've just been a fantastic partner in this, so thank you.
Absolutely. And if I could take that just one step further, I want to thank everybody who's giving us their time, because I know a lot of times women second guess themselves about what they want to do about money, but you taking the first step to listen to what's out there, kudos to you. Give yourself a pat on the back.
Absolutely. And as Paula mentioned, those of you who are joining us, if we didn't get to your question, we will do our best to try and engage with you after the fact. I want to encourage you also, if you want more content like this, head over to YouTube, type in The Wave Strength by Pacific Life, and like and subscribe to content so you can stay current when we have new content ready to share. I'd also like to thank our producer, Anthony, Shay, Mark, Kevin, and the entire production team here in the studio for helping us put on this fantastic event. And to you, obviously, as Paula mentioned, our viewer, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
This has been another episode of The Wave Strength, presented by Pacific Life. Don't forget to catch us on YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Although this webinar is presented by Pacific Life, the opinions and views expressed are those of the hosts and participants and do not necessarily reflect Pacific Life's views on any of the topics discussed. Pacific Life is a product provider. It is not a fiduciary and therefore does not give advice or make recommendations regarding insurance or investment products. Pacific Life, its affiliates, its distributors, and respective representatives do not provide any employer-sponsored qualified plan administrative services or impartial advice about investments, and do not act in a fiduciary capacity for any plan. Pacific Life refers to Pacific Life Insurance Company and its affiliates, including Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Insurance products can be issued in all states except New York by Pacific Life Insurance Company or Pacific Life and Annuity Company. In New York, insurance products are only issued by Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Product availability and features may vary by state. Each insurance company is solely responsible for the financial obligations accruing under the products it issues. This webinar was recorded on March 29th, 2023.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. We'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation below and leave a comment on your thoughts on what the industry can do better for participants as it pertains to lifetime income solutions. And if you'd like more interesting content, click one of these links over here.